A while back, I woke up in the middle of the night wondering how I could use up a couple of wrinkly apples I had in the fridge. And then it hit me. Apple Cinnamon Buttery Biscuits. My husband eats homemade biscuits almost every day. Yes, the American Southern flaky kind. After many trials and variations, I came up with a version that is worthy of sharing with you today. This is a version he really likes. Let's check out my Apple Cinnamon Buttery Biscuit recipe, great for any day of the week or for a special treat during the holidays. For the ingredients, you'll need 2 to 3 small to medium-sized apples of any kind, ground cinnamon, brown sugar, all-purpose flour, butter, salt, baking powder, milk, and cinnamon-flavored applesauce. These biscuits are like a traditional Southern biscuit with lots of twists. It's a quick bread and doesn't contain yeast, so we're going to go ahead and preheat our oven to 450 degrees, and then we're going to line a large baking sheet with parchment paper. You can use silicone mats. I like the parchment paper because it's a quick, easy cleanup. The biscuits don't stick to anything. And then set that aside. First, we're going to peel and core the apples. You can leave the peel on if you're sort of in a hurry. The peel has lots of fiber in it, so it adds an extra health benefit if you want that. Sometimes I make this recipe with the peel, sometimes I don't. So for purposes of showing you today, we're gonna cut the peeling off. So you're gonna need 2 to 3 apples, depending on the size. The amount of apples you want is a total of 350 to 400 grams like this before they've been peeled and cored. Once they've been peeled and cored, then they're going to equal about 275 to 300 grams. If you have an apple core, of course you can do it that way. For me, this is just the easiest way to cut and core my apples, is just cut it on the board and then I have the core left over. It's that simple. I find cutting these into small dice works really well in this recipe because the small dice, as in this size, will disperse more throughout the biscuit, and so you feel like you get a little bit of apple in every bite. The easiest way to core an apple is to cut the side off, lay it flat, cut another side off, flip it over, cut another side off, flip it over, and cut the other side off, and you have the core in the middle. If you don't want to waste those little bits at the end, you could just chop them off like this. That's what I do, and I add them to the bowl. And then for a piece with a flat side, I cut it in half, flip it up on its side, cut it in half that way, return it to the flat, larger flat side, cut it, and then you've got small pieces. Small diced apples should be in a bowl. You could use a small, medium-sized bowl. This is where we're going to add layers of flavor to this biscuit. We're going to put in 2 grams, which is 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, and 50 grams, which is 3 tablespoons packed brown sugar. And then just stir this all together. You want to stir well so that the apples separate and are coated in both the sugar and the cinnamon. Okay, and then just set the bowl aside for now. In a very large bowl, we're going to combine the dry ingredients. We're going to start with 480 grams, which is 4 cups of all-purpose flour. If you're using a measuring spoon, be sure to fluff and scoop and then level off the flour in your cup. Since these are cinnamon apple buttery biscuits, we are going to use butter as our fat here. So if you're using unsalted butter, you're going to add 9 grams, which is 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I'm actually going to be using salted butter, so I'm going to add 6 grams, which is 1 teaspoon of salt. We're going to add 30 grams, which is 2 tablespoons of baking powder for that traditional biscuit rise. And finally, for spice, we're going to add that second layer of cinnamon, and this is 2 grams, which is 1.5 teaspoons. And then you just want to stir your ingredients until everything is dispersed well and we don't have any one ingredient concentrated in any one spot. Now it's time to cut in the fat, or in our case, butter. We're using 113 grams, which is a stick, or 4 ounces or 8 tablespoons, whatever measurement you have. And this is diced cold butter. It's been in their fridge. You can use either salted or unsalted. I am actually using salted. And then using a pastry cutter, which is what I'm using here. Knives, forks, your fingers, you just want to cut in the butter until the butter is cut into really small pieces, about the size of little peas. You could also use a food processor, just make sure you blend it only enough that the butter is in small pieces. Okay, now we're gonna take our apple mixture again, and you wanna stir it because that brown sugar has brought out a little bit of that moisture, and so that moisture is gonna sit at the bottom, but we want that moisture because it just adds another layer of flavor with that cinnamon and sugar into our biscuits. So give it a quick stir, and then just place that mixture into your flour mixture. Okay, we're just gonna stir until the apples are mixed in with the flour. We have flour coating on all the apples. In addition to that brown sugar and cinnamon. Oh, this smells nice right now. In a 2-cup measuring cup, you're gonna measure out your cinnamon applesauce, and you wanna measure out 125 grams, which is a half a cup. You're also going to measure out 240 milliliters, which is 1 cup of milk. I'm using whole milk. I prefer whole milk in this recipe because the richness combined with the apples and cinnamon is like having an apple pie. Combine the milk and the applesauce together and stir them. So notice I did use cinnamon applesauce. That's that extra layer of cinnamon. That's our 3rd layer of cinnamon now. So we actually layered the cinnamon in this recipe in 3 different stages with the apples, in the flour mixture, and now with the applesauce. So it's not overpowering, but you get a little bit of cinnamon in every bite. It's that layer of cinnamon that adds spice depth to every aspect of this recipe. Go ahead and stir that milk and cinnamon together. It looks nice and spicy brown. Okay, we're gonna make a well in the center of our flour and apple mixture. And we're gonna pour in our rich, spicy milk in the center. And we're just going to stir it until all the ingredients are moistened. This is a biscuit, so it should be a dense dough. Dough is nice, moistened, and mixed, as you can see here. Okay, there are 2 methods by which you can divide your dough into biscuits. So I want to show you both methods. You can decide what you choose to do. The first is a drop method. You could just take a spoon of the dough and then drop it on your cookie sheet with the parchment paper. So it's as simple as that right there, okay? That's called a drop biscuit. It's the easiest way to do it. If you want your dough to be equal sizes, you could also use, I just sprayed a 1/4 cup measuring cup, and the cookie spray will just help the dough come out a little easier. And then you see how it's just packed in there. And then you could just spoon it out, and that would be another drop biscuit. Okay, and then the traditional biscuit making method is the cutout using a biscuit cutter or a cookie cutter. So we're gonna lightly flour our work surface, and then we're gonna take our dough and then just scoop it out onto the work surface. Flour your hands well and lightly knead the dough to where you can get it into a nice disc shape where it's smooth all around and you don't have any extra cracks and creases, so we can make it look pretty. That's the whole point of patting it out and cutting it out using a cutter. Flatten your dough into a disc that's 1 inch thick. Just make sure you have plenty of flour all underneath it. I love that you can see the butter chunks and the apple chunks in this. Then take a 2.5 inch round biscuit or cookie cutter. You can use a small drinking glass, anything that's round. And then just start cutting out the rounds. So check that out, look at all the apples. And then just place it on your baking sheet. You could put these close together. Biscuits all touch in the oven, so it's okay if they're touched. And then just cut out your rounds. This could go very quickly. As you can see, I have scraps left over. So just gather them up, reshape the dough back into a disc, flatten it out to 1 inch thick, and continue cutting out your rounds. You know, I've got my little guy left over here, just a piece of dough, so I'm just gonna shove him in here somewhere. So you should be able to get 20 to 22 biscuits here. I think I actually have 23 actually. Regardless of the method, using either quick drop biscuits, which were those two, or the traditional cutting using a cookie cutter, you're going to bake them the same way. So just place them in a preheated oven for 20 to 25 minutes or until the biscuits are golden brown. Biscuits are hot out of the oven. We can eat them now and enjoy. So let's take a closer look. All right, even though the biscuits are touching, they separate very easily. Notice how nice and thick and tall the biscuits are with apples peppered throughout. So the dark coloring that you see on the top, on the bottoms, and then around, sort of in the center where you normally might see white from a biscuit, is due to the cinnamon and the brown sugar. These were our 2 drop biscuits. So you could tell they're not the prettiest looking biscuit, but they're very easy to do, so they would be totally fine. This was our last biscuit we did, so no, it's just not very pretty. I love that you could just see the apples. I mean, the apples are everywhere. This is just a screaming fall. Because of the butter, it's a little bit of a crispy exterior there. And we're gonna tear in. Nice tear, again, chunks of apple. That's what you want in pretty much every bite. You can see the cinnamon dotted throughout as well. They definitely have some layers to them from the butter. This is a well-balanced biscuit. These biscuits hit the spot for a light apple pie feel, yet bready treat. They are great for breakfast as they are not too sweet or rich. These biscuits are more like traditional biscuits, meaning they are not muffins or scones, but more on the lighter, fluffier texture side with a nice spicy, appley, and buttery flavor profile. If you like biscuits or scones and want to try something a little different, then give these a try. We really like them with a pat of butter, but you can serve them however you choose. Many, many thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, go bake the world.